Welcome, superstar. If you're watching this video, it's because you're interested in how to create a sacred space for your event or retreat. If you're a leader, a coach, a guide who wants to be leading retreats where people have spiritual and personal transformation, then you must pay attention to how to create a sacred container for your retreat. When I use the term container, a lot of us use this term, I've heard it a lot lately. I use it in the sense of creating a structure within which transformation can take place. A sacred structure, a sacred container. So a sacred container is one that you build and that you create intentionally so that people can have sacred experiences. Now, why might we want to do this? Well, because in the world, there tends to be kind of a separation between the day-to-day hustle and bustle, corporate world, career, driving through traffic, and the world of a retreat. Not all retreats are created equal. I personally run at least two very different types of retreats. I run a very businessy, strategic retreat, and then I run these things called family vacation with my clients that are more spiritual and personal development. But believe it or not, I actually create what I consider to be sacred space, sacred container in both of these retreats. The only difference really is in the first one, I kind of keep it a little bit more under the radar. I might not be quite so obvious about how I'm creating a sacred space, but I consider all of these spaces to be sacred. And the reason for that is that I believe that people come to these retreats to do sacred work. In the business ones, they're coming to do the work of who do they want to be in the world? What offering do they want to make to the world? What's their contribution? What's their message, their mission, their value for the world? And I believe that to be sacred work. And then, of course, in our more spiritual retreats, also that's more clear and more obvious. And so it looks a little bit different, but there's certain things that I have in common that I've done again and again, and that I witness also people doing in the retreats that I attend and that I have really incredible experiences with. So I want to share with you what some of those common threads are so that you can consider weaving them into your retreats. So the first thing you want to think about is to create at the very beginning of your retreat, before you even really get started, is to create a set of expectations and agreements. Definitely, if you're trying to create sacred space, then you want to make sure that people are present and focused and engaged. And for that reason, one of the very first things I do is lay out what presence looks like. What does it mean to be fully present in this experience? I actually have a whole video about this that I'll link to below that's called How to Open a Retreat and Make Sure That Everyone is Fully Present and Engaged. It's a great video. You might want to watch it after this one. So the first thing I do is I do this welcome and I set out what are the rules of this container. Now, if I'm going to create sacred space, there's some things that are pretty obvious. I don't want to have people with their cell phones texting or checking their email in the middle of our retreat. So one of the things we do is we ask people to not just put their phones on vibrate, but to actually leave them outside the circle. Don't even bring them into the circle. And in fact, at retreats before COVID, we used to gather everybody's cell phone and put them away in a box. And then during the breaks or when we were done, they could go back and get their cell phone as long as they put it back in the box before entering back into the circle. And speaking of circles, that's another really great strategy, another great technique. I personally love to do retreats in a circle format. I do the business retreat, we do in a U-shaped, which is similar to a circle, but it's not a closed circle. I'm at the front of the U, and then we've got everybody sitting around the U. And in family vacation, we do the full circle with it's closed circle with one main entrance and exit from the circle. I bring this up because I find that circle or round table type of format really encourages everyone to feel equal and everyone to participate, rather than having this dynamic where you've got some people in the front of the room and some people in the back of the room. So if you want to create a sacred container, then consider using a circle. Speaking of circles, this is something one of my mentors, Nani Leah Diamond, introduced recently. She runs our retreats that I'm a member of in circle. And recently, we started taking on making the entrance to and the exit from the circle sacred itself, like having some sort of acknowledgement that we're entering circle, that we're entering sacred space, and an acknowledgement that we're now exiting sacred space. And that way it kind of creates a specialness about walking into the circle, where there's certain behaviors that we can do outside the circle that we don't do inside the circle. So that might be something that you want to consider. Now, before I move on with other ways that you can create a sacred container, I do want to invite you to take a moment to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and at any point, please share a comment below. Recently, one thing that I recognized was that in the past, we had kind of been a little bit lackadaisical about having people chit-chatting in the circle or eating in the circle. And at the latest family vacation, maybe it was 2 ago, I made the declaration that we would no longer be eating meals in the circle. Like we're going to have meals outside the circle, and if you want to eat there, great. But if you don't eat there, please don't bring the meal to the circle. And the reason for that is somebody's deep into a share and somebody else is clattering on the plate, or plate falls to the ground, or a glass gets knocked over. It can be very distracting, can kind of ruin the moment, so to speak. So we want to keep the space clean. We want to keep the space clear of anything that is not the focus of the event, which is, in our case, transformation. Another thing that I like to bring into the circle is to establish my leadership in the circle. This is something really powerful. I work with leaders. I don't know who you work with, but I work with other people who are used to leading people. So it can be hard for them sometimes to lean back, relax, and allow themselves to be led. I talk about this in the other video that I referred to earlier. So one thing that I do at the very beginning when I'm setting the container of the circle is ask for permission. I say, will you agree this rest of this weekend, or during this 3 or 4 or 5 days together, agree to let me lead? And instead of you leading and coaching and trying to serve everyone, you just sit back, relax, and have your experience and allow yourself to be led. And ever since I started doing that, I've found that people are a lot more easy to lead, that it's easier to have the experience, that I don't find myself having to try to get the control back from the room, because I'll just say to someone, hey, wait a second, can you hold on a second and just let me lead this? And by recapping and reusing those same words, let me lead this, they remember, oh yeah, I did make that agreement at the beginning. I'm going to lean back and let her take back over this. So these are just some of my little tips and tricks for you if you're trying to make your experiences more deepen the experience, make them more sacred, more connected. These are some ways that you can do that. Before I forget, another thing you might want to do is set the privacy expectations for the space and let people know what the rules are. I like to have a rule of what happens in the circle stays in the circle. And I'm really strict about that rule. I'm so strict that I mean, like, even if someone was in the circle and a share was made in the circle, we don't talk about the share outside of the circle, because it's a different time and a different place. What happens in here stays here, and we don't take it out of the circle, even with the person right there. So these are some of the things that I've found have really made the circle time together very sacred and very special, and had people be very focused and present and engaged and willing to share more vulnerably, knowing that they're safe and they don't have to worry about having to face some of their demons outside of the circle. And finally, there's always decorations. I find that decorating a space is a great way of connoting and creating and cultivating a certain energetic in that space. So both of my retreats, we do a lot of fun things to decorate the space and to make sure it's conducive to the work we're doing. So at the Business Breakthrough Retreat, for example, we've got flowers, we've got step and repeat behind me with really beautiful logos. We have the beautiful playbooks. We have a little flower next to each person at their table. We have matching water bottles that we give away. We have artwork on the walls that we hang up, and sometimes the hotels get upset with us. But we have pop-up banners that inspire people and share different case studies. So we do a lot to seed the space with the kind of things that are going to be inspiring and motivational. And then over here on the family vacation side, I use incense, I use Palo Santo, I use candles, sometimes also flowers and decorations, and ways to just cozy up the space. We bring in pillows and blankets and rugs and move furniture around to make sure that the space feels inviting and cozy. So I hope this gave you some cool ideas about how you can create a more sacred space for your retreats and events. If you're looking for more ideas about how to grow your retreats or events-based business, then maybe I can help. You can learn more at superstaractivator.com/go. I look forward to meeting you.